Hey everyone, it's Joseph from MuseResources.com, and today I've got a brand new free widget for you guys. If you head over to MuseResources.com, it is there and ready to download. It's called Float, and what it's doing is applying this CSS animation that's making this little rocket ship and the puffs below it and behind it float up, down, left, and right. And the idea is that whether it's an illustration or a text box or a button, we essentially work in 2 or 3 different dimensions, depending on how you look at it on the computer. We've got a 2-dimensional screen where we can make things bigger, smaller, higher, or lower on the page, but another way to call attention to something is to make it move, which is why I created the set of Move widgets, which you'll find also linked on MuseResources.com. You can also go to moveformuse.com to check those out. But this is along the same lines. This is in the same vein, that if things move, we have a new axis to create and draw attention. And it also makes this illustration look a heck of a lot more interesting and a bit more professional. So let me show you how this widget works. It's really, really easy to use. So essentially, you've got stuff on your canvas. You've got your design elements on your canvas. They could be images, text boxes, really just about anything that sits on your canvas in Muse. And the way we target it to apply animation is using graphic styles. If you're not familiar with graphic styles, there's a panel called Graphic Styles on the right-hand side. But graphic styles is a way to save the visual effects that you've applied to an object in Muse, and these graphic styles end up in the code that Muse produces, so we're able to use widgets to target that code. So we're not really using the graphic styles for their typical purpose. We're more just using the name of a graphic style applied to an element in order to get our widget to target that element and make it animate. So when you drag in the float widget, you'll get a little control panel, and the first thing is to type in the name of the graphic style you're trying to animate. So what you'd want to do, it doesn't matter what order you do this in, but let's say that I want to call this rocket. Now that I've created an animation looking for rocket, I've got to make sure that the rocket has a style called rocket applied to it so that it gets discovered and it gets animated. And the way we do that is on the graphic styles panel, there's a little icon that looks like a sticky note to create a new graphic style. When you click that, it creates a new graphic style called style, which isn't selected or named. It's actually probably my least favorite thing about Adobe Muse. You have to go select it. You also have to double click it to rename it. And I'm going to call it, what did I call it? Rocket. I'm going to call it Rocket. I'm going to click OK. And if you look down here at the widget, if you forget what you called the thing that you're trying to target, or if you get a little frazzled, get out of order, or if you have a bunch of these widgets on the page, I did this a little differently than I've done it in the past. I actually have your settings show up in the widget bubble without having to call up the settings. Whatever you set here for duration, magnitude, float direction, it all shows up in the widget, which I think is really helpful, especially when you have a bunch of them on the page, because you can keep dragging this widget in again and again and again to animate different elements. So now that I've got this with a graphic style called Rocket applied, and I've got this targeting Rocket, we should be in business. Let's preview in the browser. There we go. The rocket's floating up and down, and if we go back and take a closer look at our settings, it is going to float up and down vertically. It's set to vertical. It is happening over the course of 4 seconds, which means it's going to go up and then down over the course of 4 seconds. So if you want it to be slower, you can turn up the duration. If you want it to be quicker, you can turn down the duration. And then the magnitude is how much it's actually moving up and down. So if I set this to, let's go to 30, just to be extreme. So it's going to move up and down 30 pixels. It's going to move up 30 pixels and then back down to where it started over the course of 5 seconds. And it's going to do so vertically. So let's preview that in the browser. And there we have it. It's a slow effect because it's 5 seconds long, but it is moving further up and down. You can see it's drifting further away from this little puff, this little cloud here. So I could also drag in another float widget, or I can option drag my existing float widget to create another one. And now in this one, I'll call up the settings, and I'll name this Clouds, we'll say. I've already got these graphic styles created from before, from my example at the beginning, but we're just going to ignore those. So we'll just create one called Clouds, and we'll have this float back and forth. Let's just do 10 pixels back and forth, and horizontally instead of vertically. So the clouds will just kind of drift side to side. And then the duration, let's have this go over 3 seconds. Let's have it go a little quicker than the rocket ship goes up and down, because maybe there's wind blowing by and it's a little turbulent, but the rocket ship is heavy. That's going to be going up and down slowly. So we're looking good there. We just have to make sure the clouds themselves have a graphic style applied, and that graphic style is called clouds. All lowercase, making it match. Click OK, and now we're ready to preview in the browser. And there we go. Now the clouds are going side to side. Now that combination, that might not be the magical combination to make this rocket ship look good. You might be better off with a quicker ship and slower clouds, but it's totally up to you guys. I mean, you can really do whatever you want. And this works with the responsive features of Adobe Muse. It doesn't get in the way of the responsive resizing, and it does not get in the way of interactions like rollovers and things like that. So if we wanted this to be a link, I'll just link it to the £sign just to create a fake link. And with that link established, I can go to rollover, and if I wanted, let me leave the rollover opacity up, and then I'll put the normal opacity down, and we'll preview this in the browser. And now when you mouse over it, see, it lights up like that. So it can be animated and interactive at the same time. In fact, you can go so far as to go into the transition settings, and you can enable a fade transition. I'll do a 0.3 second fade transition to smooth out that rollover. And now when we preview in the browser, when I roll over it, see, it does that glow, but it doesn't interrupt the animation. And the link works, so you're totally good to go. I could click on it, but I linked it to a hashtag, just a $sign, so it doesn't really go anywhere. But you can see there that it does work. So it's really cool. Float is a flexible and powerful little widget, and I'm really stoked to see how you guys use it. So head over to museresources.com. When you get to the main page, just head over to Library Widgets, and you'll find it right at the top, and it's an entirely free download. So grab that and subscribe if you haven't already. I will have another tutorial coming next week. We're going to talk about choosing colors for your web and UI design work. So subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys soon.